Zack Polanski has been all across the media since becoming leader of the Green Party on Tuesday, and he probably got the most hostile hearing from Ed Balls on Good Morning Britain. He and Susanna Reid spent a while grilling Polanski about a 12-year-old Sun article involving hypnotherapy and breast enlargement. But Balls went on to say this.
But on the climate, would you rather have a Labour government or a Conservative
I'd rather have a Labour government, but a Labour government is not enough. And actually, when you have a climate crisis, it's not enough to have a gold star.
You rather gave the impression that Keir Starmer was basically a Tory. They're all the same. But you've now told us that you'd rather have a Labour government than a Conservative government. And so I'm just trying to understand that contradiction.
I think there's a much more fundamental question, which are the Labour government doing enough to tackle the climate crisis? Fundamentally, no, they're not. Are they better than the Conservative government? Yes, marginally, but I'm not interested in better.
So if you've got
doing the right thing.
If you've got a Labour Conservative marginal seat, would you tell your candidate not to stand because it's better that Labour win than the Conservatives win for the climate? Or would you say it's OK if a Green candidate stands, takes votes from Labour, and the Tories get in?
I want to see every Labour politician who's voted for a two-child benefit cap, for disability cuts, for the ongoing genocide in Gaza to sell arms to them.
Even if that's
I want to see them replaced.
Even if that's worse for the environment, that's OK. You're the Green Party leader, but you would have a worse Green outcome for these other issues.
I don't think people like being held hostage like that. And if the Labour government want to bring in proportional representation so that every vote counts equally...
It's called voting.
Well, it's not called voting if it's a broken voting system. And if the Labour Party are keeping that same broken voting system, despite the fact your members and the unions are saying we want a fair voting system,
the next election, it's going to be first past the post. Are you going to say to people... Yeah, it will be.
Well, then I think if it's still first past the post, there's no way Keir Starmer can say it's me or Nigel Farage, because he's the person who has kept that broken voting system in place. If we want better politics, it's time to have a better voting system.
Now, remember, Ed Balls is the husband of Yvette Cooper, who is the current Home Secretary. And he's putting to Zack Polanski. Actually, I watched the whole interview. The first bit of it was about the hypnosis boob story. The huge middle chunk was about, well, are you worried that if people vote for you, they're not going to vote for Labour and then the Tories will get in or Reform will get in, whatever. There was no real debate about any of the substantive issues, which made it seem to me like they are a little bit shook because they weren't going after him on any of the things he was actually saying. And I mean, I've said this a few times on the show before, but I mean, I do think there is a possible world in which, you have a Keir Starmer government. He's not, particularly left-wing, but he's sort of social democratic. He is improving public services. He is taxing the rich a bit, maybe not as much as me or you might like, but, he's sort of doing a decent job. And that then if you said, well, he's not left-wing enough, so let's stand against him and allow reform in, that argument would have held, and what Ed Balls was saying might have seemed a bit more reasonable. But the fact is, since Keir Starmer has come into government, all he said is, I hate left-wing people and I love flags. Like, that's it. And so there's no reason to sort of, or there's no, it's just implausible to say that anyone standing against Labour is being some sort of ideological fanatic splitter, because Keir Starmer has so clearly made absolutely no attempt whatsoever to try and get left-wing people to vote for him. If Keir Starmer's message had been, look, I want this to be a big, broad tent, yeah, no one's going to be happy with everything I do. I've got some things for the left, I've got some things for the centre, I've got some things for social conservatives, but hopefully you can all be part of this project. Then, yeah, maybe what Ed Balls was saying to Zack Polanski would have been remotely plausible. But in the actual world in which we actually live, it's not. Barry, what did you think of, I suppose, Zack Polanski's first 24 hours as leader of the Greens?
Firstly, I thought that interview was completely absurd, just absurd. And for me, it points to a media in the UK that is often just completely unserious when it comes to, its political coverage. I think he spent 4 minutes talking about the boobs story before he even moved on to that next rant about, running against Labour candidates. And I just find that, when Ed Balls interviews people from the left on Good Morning Britain, there's a sort of a disdain comes off him. I'm hugely in favour of tough interviews, and I wish journalists would interview people even tougher. But it's just this odd disdain. And, I found that whole line of questioning also ridiculous. It was almost like, how dare you run against the Labour Party? We have a two-party system here. It works pretty fine. Like, who do you think you are to come along and put a cat among the pigeons? I think it's just demeaning, and it's disrespectful of the British public, and of people who are looking for a different kind of politics. And as you said, they never really spoke about any substantive issues, despite Zack Polanski trying many, many times to do so. I honestly think in the last 24 hours, what's become clear is that Labour are running scared. I mean, the Labour press office, sent out this tweet again about the absurd boobs thing. And I just had this vision, like it came out as soon as he was elected. And I just had this vision of them having it ready and thinking, okay, guys, get it out there. We're going to get him with this. And then he just came back with this brilliant retort, which was like, yes, I did something 12 years ago that I've said sorry for, but I'm not supporting a genocide. And, so I think they're going to have to be really careful with Zack Polanski, because I think he's sharp. And, what they've shown is that these attacks in the last couple of days have been sort of toothless. There was another one on Twitter where, an influencer said, oh, the Greens have elected a white man as their leader. How revolutionary, which, again, people just thought was a ridiculous allegation. So, I think what's become apparent in the last 24 hours is that Labour is really, really running scared. Now they don't just have this threat from the right with reform, but they have a threat from the left with, I think, a party that if he gets the chance to put his policies forward, if he doesn't have to continually deal with absurd interviews like that, I think his policies will be popular with the British public.
And he is quite good at dealing with absurd interviews, actually. It's quite, nice to see someone on the left who feels, or who seems quite comfortable, sort of getting an interview back on track.